The human brain is probably the most complex object in the entire known universe. But for all its wonder, it's also a fortress. And when something goes wrong inside, think about diseases like Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, or depression, just seeing the problem, let alone fixing it, is one of the greatest challenges in all of medicine. So today, we're diving into the incredible technologies being used to peek inside this fortress and deliver healing right to the source. Okay, so let's get right into it. For years, we've had amazing tools like MRI and CT scans, and they're fantastic. They give us this beautiful, detailed map of the brain, its structure, its shape, the whole layout. But that's kind of like having a perfect blueprint of a theater. It tells you where the stage is, where the seats are, but it doesn't show you the play. And to really understand disease, we need to see the play. We need to watch the brain's chemistry, live, in action. And this right here is the absolute core of what we're talking about. On one hand, you've got MRI and CT scans. They show us the stage, the physical structure, a static map. But on the other hand, you have something called molecular imaging. And this shows us the actors, the brain's actual chemistry, its function. It's a dynamic, live performance of molecules like dopamine and glucose zipping through our brain. So, how do we get a front row seat to this molecular show? Right, so how in the world do we see this chemistry? Well, the key is a technology that lets us zoom right past the physical structure and see the actual chemical reactions that define how our brain is functioning moment by moment. It's called positron emission tomography, or just PET for short. And the keyword here is functional. See, PET doesn't just take a static picture, it tracks a process. It uses these tiny, specially designed radioactive molecules, they're called radiotracers, to follow the chemical pathways in the brain. You can almost think of them as little molecular spies we send in on a secret mission. So here's how this whole spy mission works. First, our little molecular spy, the tracer, is created. Then it's injected and it hitches a ride in the bloodstream right to its specific target in the brain. Maybe it's designed to look exactly like glucose so we can see which neurons are hungry for energy. Or maybe it mimics dopamine to check on that system. Once it gets there, the tracer's radioactive atom decays, and it releases a particle that immediately collides with an electron. And that collision, well, that's the magic that makes this whole thing possible. The physics of this are just mind-blowing. As one scientist put it, that collision between a positron and an electron is an annihilation event. They literally destroy each other, releasing a burst of energy, two gamma rays that fly off in perfectly opposite directions. I mean, think about that. We are literally leveraging tiny energetic bombs at a microscopic level just to see what's going on inside our own heads. It's incredible. So the PET scanner has these detectors that pick up thousands of these gamma ray signals every single second. And from that data, it builds a 3D map of all that molecular activity. This is a total game changer. With Alzheimer's, we can now see areas where neurons just aren't using glucose properly anymore. With Parkinson's, we can directly measure the loss of dopamine function. We can finally see the actors, and we can tell when they've forgotten their lines. But, like we said at the beginning, the brain is a fortress. And seeing the problem from the outside is one thing, but getting a solution inside, well, that's a completely different battle. So now we have this amazing ability to pinpoint exactly what's going wrong, right down to the molecule. But the moment we try to send in a drug to fix it, we run smack into one of biology's most incredible defenses, a giant wall. This defense is called the blood-brain barrier. You can think of it as the ultimate security system for your brain. It's this tightly packed layer of cells that lines all the blood vessels in your head, and its entire job is to keep out toxins, germs, and pretty much anything else that doesn't have a VIP pass. It's an evolutionary masterpiece that protects our most important organ. But, and this is a huge but, that protection comes at a serious cost. That security system is so good at its job that it blocks about 98% of all potential drugs from ever getting into the brain. And for bigger, more complicated drugs, forget it. The number is basically 100%. So the very wall that keeps us safe is also the wall that keeps the medicine out. So if you can't get through the wall, what do? Well, you find a clever way to bypass it completely. You basically deploy a kind of medical Trojan horse. This strategy is called direct drug delivery, and it's pretty much exactly what it sounds like. Instead of trying to sneak a drug past the brain's guards, surgeons go in and implant a tiny tube, a catheter, directly into the brain or the fluid around it. That catheter is then connected to a small pump, which delivers a steady, super precise dose of medicine right where it needs to be. And the advantage here is just massive when you compare it to taking a regular pill. With a pill, the drug goes everywhere. It's systemic. A teeny tiny fraction might make it to the brain, but the rest can cause side effects all over your body. With the implanted pump, though, the drug stays right in the brain. Almost 100% of it gets to the target, and the risk of those body-wide side effects just plummets. Okay, so we've got two revolutionary ideas on the table: using PET scans to see brain chemistry, and using these implanted pumps to get past the brain's fortress. Now, let's look at a truly groundbreaking clinical trial for Parkinson's disease that put both of these incredible ideas to the test. The mission here was really ambitious. Researchers wanted to use a large protein called platelet-derived growth factor, or PDGF. Now, earlier studies suggested that this growth factor could actually encourage the brain to grow new dopamine-producing neurons, potentially reversing some of the damage that Parkinson's causes. But there's that problem again, isn't there? PDGF is a big, bulky protein. There is no way the blood-brain barrier is just going to let it stroll on through. So how on earth do you get it to the neurons that need it so badly? You guessed it. You use the Trojan horse. In this clinical trial, patients were surgically implanted with that pump and catheter system, which then delivered PDGF directly into their brains, 24/7 for 12 straight days. Yeah, it's an incredibly invasive and daring approach, but it was literally the only way to get that medicine past the fortress walls. So the study itself was what's called a phase 1/2A trial. It was small, just 12 patients, and they were randomly split into 3 groups. One got a placebo, one got a low dose of PDGF, and one got a high dose. Because this was all so new, the main goal wasn't even to prove it worked, but simply to prove it was safe. And the good news is, the results showed that it was safe. But that just leads to the million-dollar question. Was it actually doing anything? Was this growth factor really stimulating new dopamine neurons? How could they possibly know for sure what was happening inside? This is where our molecular spies make their triumphant return. To see the biological effect, the researchers used a very specific PET scan, one designed to track a protein called the dopamine transporter, or DAT. Just think of the DAT signal as a head count. The more signal you see, the more healthy dopamine neurons you have. It's that simple. And the results were just remarkable. In the placebo group, that DAT signal barely budged at all. But in the groups that got the PDGF, there was a significant, clear increase in the signal, and it was dose-dependent. The high-dose group saw a 25% increase. Now look, this was early data from a very small study. But it was a stunning molecular signal that the Trojan horse strategy was working. The treatment appeared to be regenerating the very neurons that Parkinson's destroys. So, when you put these technologies together, the ability to see the molecular problem and the ability to deliver a solution directly to it, you are opening up a completely new frontier for treating some of the most difficult brain diseases out there. This combination of molecular imaging and direct drug delivery, it creates so much incredible hope, but it also raises some really profound questions. I mean, we're talking about surgically implanting devices directly into the human brain to deliver powerful regenerative drugs. It really forces us to ask, in our mission to heal, how far is too far?